Hey, welcome to today, everybody. Welcome to Shorebird Webinars. Today, Stephen O'Donnell is going to be talking to us today about the crazy to hire matrix. I'll let him introduce himself. I'm sorry, he's far more able to do that than I can. So welcome back to quite a few people that were with us yesterday, and hello to some new faces that I can see there. Before we get started, I just want to go through a couple of bits of housekeeping. Stephen, a lot of what he's going to be talking about today open up the questions and thoughts for you, really. So we've been using the chat box for a few icebreakers just now. If you could continue to use that and have discussions and come up insofar as the kind of things that you might want to say and you might want to get involved with, then please use that chat box effectively, because the webinars are as good really as the people that are online talking and building that through. So please use the chat boxes there. The slides and recordings from this webinar will be published in our LinkedIn group, and I will also send you an email from the platform which will give you links and access to the slides that you can share them with your work colleagues or network, and any additional information that comes out today I'll also send through to you too. The webinar will probably run for about 45 minutes, depending on how much engagement goes on with the chat box. So expect your lunchtime to go through to about 1:45. And I think Stephen probably got some time at the end for questions and answers, but it won't go any later than 1:45. Remember, we do host the webinars weekly, and I have got a full schedule listed right until, look at my diary this morning, until the end of April. So keep an eye on our website, and if you're not receiving a monthly email from ourselves with all the webinars that are forthcoming, then please let me know, and I'll just make sure that you're in our guest list. And you can keep up to date that way. Alternatively, obviously, we do promote them via all the social media channels as well, so please watch those as well. I'm also really interested, if there's a topic in particular that you'd like to talk about or hear about, then it'd be really, really helpful if you wanted to drop me an email, liz.wilson@shorebird-rpo.com, and let me know maybe a challenging issue or a pressing issue that you might have with regards to your recruitment, HR, or legal side of things. And please let me know. Always happy to see if we can find a partner that will be able to deliver on that. Okay. So without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Stephen. So welcome, Stephen. Welcome to today.
Thank you very much, Liz. Thanks for the introduction. Thanks for having me on again. Let me tell you, everyone, first a little bit about my background, and welcome everyone who's joined us today. I probably best known for running the National Online Recruitment Awards, which I've been doing for the past 15 years. But for 27 years now, I've been involved in recruitment, mostly owning and running recruitment firms, and from 2000 running online recruitment services and programs, namely the National Online Recruitment Awards I mentioned before. So my experience has been in recruitment on all sides, but not on the HR side. From the NORAs, I have very much a perspective from the candidates side of things. So I look at employment and recruitment and hiring processes from the candidate's perspective. I have a new company, which is PC Evaluate, and we deliver psychometric assessments to the UK corporate sector, and that's going extremely well. There certainly seems to be a big growth in assessments of candidates in not only the later stages of recruitment processes, but in the very early stages, and of course in the assessment of existing staff for training and development. The presentation I'm going to give today is not so much I'll be speaking to everyone, but talking points on which we can start to discuss things. It's actually prompted by a bit of a misogynistic video which appeared on YouTube a few months ago, where some American chap was describing the correlation between hot girls and crazy girls, and the line that you don't want to cross when considering going out with a certain person. So the video itself was funny, but I thought that's a good way of describing some of the characteristics of what comes up in the recruitment process. So first of all, on the screen we have here, this is an example of atypical, not every recruitment exercise, but a typical recruitment exercise where what we see here, the large circle, is all the people that actually apply to a vacancy when an employer is advertising for candidates. Sometimes you're snowed under with the volume of candidates. The red circle would represent the people you want to apply for the vacancy, and of course, only some of those actually do. And being able to identify and work with the crossover in the diagram there is always very difficult. Now, in other recruitment exercises, you might see the circles being larger and smaller on the other side, where you want a lot of people to apply and hardly anyone does. So you're still looking for that intersection of where the candidates are that you can identify from those who apply. Not all are going to be suitable. So in looking at the differentiation or the discrimination, if you like, of good candidates from bad, suitable candidates from unsuitable candidates, and I say discrimination pointedly in that all recruitment is about discrimination between suitable and unsuitable candidates. Not all discrimination is a bad thing, but being able to tell good or suitable candidates from bad is very important to all of us. So if we go on to the matrix itself, if we imagine a diagram here, where along the bottom we have on the graph the line for skills and experience, 0, 5, 8, and 10, you'll see going along there, for the increasing skills and experience. Skills and experience could be represented by the contents typical that you would see on someone's CV, where they've been, what qualifications they have, what work experience they have, what achievements they've made, and so on. So looking at candidates on their CV, you'll see those details would mostly be shown there. On the left-hand column there, would that be the y-axis? Yeah. The good to bad culture fit. This is how well someone's going to fit in with your organisation. Now, someone who fits in your organisation may not fit into another organisation, or indeed someone who fits into a particular department or division in your organisation might not suit for another department in your organisation. So, good to bad culture fit. The higher that they go on that scale, excuse me, the worse they would be as a culture fit for your organisation. So an ideal candidate would be low down on that scale and far to the right on the bottom scale. If we were to say that there's always a balance trying to be struck between the culture fit of an individual and the skills and experience that they bring to an organisation, we could say that there's a line. Now, this is an arbitrary line, and as I say, this is a bit of fun, which we could call the crazy to hire line. Anyone on the other side of that line, we would be crazy to hire, or you might be crazy to hire. Sometimes it's the case when recruiting that you might not have that much choice, and you may have to take risks with a candidate to get a position filled, but you should know that you're still crossing that crazy to hire line. So next screen. If we were to say that anything up to a 5 on the skills and experience, 0 to 5, we wouldn't want to look at these candidates. These candidates just don't have the skills and experience to do any job in our organisation that's going to work out well. So if we can score those candidates out, let's say they're not going to suit in any way for our company, that would be your no-go zone. Next area here, a bit further on, between a 5 and 8 on skills and experience, we can now accommodate slightly more on the good to bad culture fit. The temp zone are just on the right side of that crazy to hire line. Between a 5 and an 8 skills and experience, they've got abilities that are useful for the company, but they might not be a great culture fit. But of course, in hiring temps, they're maybe only going to be working for your company for a short period, several weeks, maybe a month, and their impact on the workforce is not going to be putting anyone in any danger. Below the temp zone, these would be your long-term contractors. Now, a long-term contractor might be with your company for 6 months, 9 months, a year, perhaps even longer. Long-term contractors, of course, are very expensive. In this instance here, we would see that they would fit well into your corporate organisation, but they're maybe not skilled enough for you to want to hire as a permanent employee, and of course, they might not want to switch from a lucrative long-term contractor rate onto a paid salary, which isn't going to work out so well for them. So long-term contractors would be in that area there. Moving up, it's always a temptation sometimes when you see someone who has very good skills and abilities, but frankly, you would definitely be crazy to consider hiring this person. They're going to be a risk for your organisation. They're going to upset the environment that they move into. Sometimes when you're over a barrel, when you have very few candidates to consider for a vacancy, then you can find yourself thinking long and hard, should I hire this person? I really need to get that slot filled. The hiring manager, the line manager, is pushing for a body in that job. That's the danger zone. We really don't want to consider candidates in there. So the danger zone is where we want to stay out of at all costs. And I'm sure some of the people listening in will have looked back on hires that they've made in the past where, in retrospect, in hindsight, and of course hindsight is 2020, in hindsight they might look back and consider that some of the people they have taken on were in that danger zone. Some candidates were just not going to fit with the type of individual that you would normally want to have in your organisation. So in looking back on those, with a diagram like this, simple as it is, maybe easy to think, well, I could certainly tick several boxes of candidates that I've hired, and they just didn't work out. And if I had more information in advance, I could have headed that off at the pass and made sure that we weren't hiring candidates in that danger zone. So as you'll see on the top
poll, Stephen.
Yeah, I was going to say on the top left, there's the poll coming up. If you want to make a vote there, have you ever looked back and considered that you might have been crazy to hire a person at some point? See, we've got 6 votes so far. I think we've all been there. I've certainly been there. I've hired some individuals that I knew were a risk at the very start, but frankly, there was a slot to fill. It had to be filled. The candidate was in front of me. I made the offer. And it's something that you learn to pay for afterwards and wish that you hadn't. So moving on from there, if we look in the next area here, the grief zone. Now the grief zone is actually individuals in the grief zone is probably the area of people who take up most time of the HR department. People who are very good at what they do, but very demanding. They want more time off, they want more commission, they want a pay rise, they want a promotion. They're upsetting other members of staff. There are entire lists of reasons why these people are in that grief zone. They're just on the right side of the danger line, but frankly, they would cause you to consider, do we really need to hang on to this person? I know that I've hung on to staff much longer than I should have done because they were, generating good revenues, and there was always the prospect that they would shape up somehow. But the grief zone is the area that will soak up. But if we have mostly HR people on the line now, I'm sure you'll know quite a few people who over the years have been in your grief zone and regularly come across your desk for much more attention than other people.
High maintenance. Someone's just mentioned. Carol's mentioned that. I've got a few.
Absolutely. Okay, and of course, as you go on, we're talking about the recruitment process, but as you go on, people are not only fitting into this at the point of recruitment, but as you go on. So when you're considering people who are existing members of staff, sometimes people can evolve, they can grow, they can build their skills, they can build their experience, they can become more valuable to the organisation. Sometimes people will come in and they're not a great culture fit, but they evolve as they grow, and they become more at one with the company culture, with the people around about them, and of course the culture of a company is always an amalgam of all the individuals in any organisation. So if you imagine a new company started up by one individual, the culture is pretty much the same as that individual's persona. As soon as you add 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or 50 or 500, then of course the culture of any organisation develops and evolves through not only all those people, but the different departments and the different locations and the different circumstances in which people work. So you would find slightly different culture within the finance department, to the sales department, to the design department, but you would still look to have a handle on not only what those cultures are like, because when you're recruiting for them, you need to know them, but the overarching culture of an organization. If you think of large multinationals, whether it be Amazon or McDonald's or any other large organization, they have an overarching company culture to which they try and recruit people who are going to fit, or people who are going to complement the culture that's already been established. So moving on from the grief zone, we get into the when can you start. These candidates are perfect. When you meet one of these people, that's the first thing you want to say to them. Can you start Monday? Can you leave your old job? Come and work here. We would love you to join our organisation. Now, as I say, on the skills and experience side of things, getting candidates at that level is very difficult. But getting people who are a good culture fit for your organisation is just as difficult. And of course, well, perhaps even more so, because the details of how someone fits culture-wise is rarely spelled out on a CV. That's why for centuries we've sat down with candidates and given them the interview and tried to find out what they're about, how well they can fit within our organisation, what makes them tick. When you live with someone, you get to know them very well, but when you're interviewing for a job, you have a very short space of time in which you are able to assess whether this person is going to be suitable for your organisation. So looking at culture fit is something that we have been doing all this time. But when we're recruiting in volume, when we're hiring high numbers of individuals at speed, which of course many HR departments are right now, with the growth coming to the economy, then being able to consistently hire for the culture that you've already established, or the culture that you're aiming for, can be much more difficult. If you imagine, for example, some industries, whether it be retail, hospitality, call centres, the care sector, then in those environments, the culture fit of the individual is not going to be on their CV, and the CV is much less relevant. If you were to imagine Tesco hiring high numbers of staff for a new store. Oh, can I just double check? Can anyone hear us properly? Anyone having problems with the sound?
There's a few people typing all fine. Everyone can hear okay.
Okay.
It seems okay.
Perhaps.
Yeah. Carol, it could
Okay,
just be your internet connection, maybe. Sorry.
Okay.
Keep going,
So
Stephen. Yeah.
sorry. So I was talking about an example of Tesco. If Tesco were hiring for a new store and they needed 200 new staff advertised locally, they might receive 1,000 applications for a range of staff, mostly on the shop floor. Then the CVs of any individuals applying for those jobs, frankly, are not going to be too relevant to Tesco. If someone's worked in retail, or worked in the health sector, or worked in any other environment before, the qualifications and experience in their CV are not going to be as relevant as the personality of the individual, the culture fit of the individual, and how that person is going to fit in with how they want their staff to be interacting with their customers. It's quite common that for retail, people are coming from a range of backgrounds to work in a local store, and in that instance, what they need to do is set aside the CV. They're going to train individuals in this instance, the Tesco way of doing things. So those hard skills will be trained in the very early stages of the job. So they need to identify the people that have the culture fit, the personality fit, that's going to work with their organisation and be consistent across every branch in the organisation. So from Aberdeen to Cornwall, you'll want to see that there's a standard being applied, and that would be the same in all organisations where you are recruiting in any kind of volume, that you have measurable standards that you can be recruiting for, even though there are separate hiring managers and line managers in each of those locations. So being able to identify a good culture fit is just as important, and oftentimes more important than what you'll see on a CV. and on a CV you might, an individual might try to explain their personality and their culture fit, but the only people who can assess that would be yourselves, the HR departments and hiring managers. So lastly, on the diagram here, bottom right, this would be the unicorn zone. These people don't exist, or they mostly don't exist. But if you do come across them, please let me know, because I've not seen any yet. You might typically call the person who started an organisation the unicorn, but they're not usually up for interview for organisations. So these people are very scarce. As I say, the diagram that we're showing here is a bit of fun and doesn't really get into a lot of the complexities and intricacies of a lot of recruitment. But when you start to think about the balance that we all make between hiring for skills and experience and culture fit for our organisation, then we can see how important one is with the other. You can't hire for one without considering the other. It would be very risky indeed for any organisation to consider candidates on that basis. Now, as I say, the diagram that we were going through there was really just to show in a bit of a fun way the things that we consider. There was a survey that I came across recently by Randstad, which surveyed, I think it was 1,400 employers, and they were asking candidates about the levels of job satisfaction. They found that roughly 1/3, 32% of individuals out there were what they would describe as unhappy in the job. And of those who were unhappy in the job, 34% were bored. That can happen. 29% in unchallenging work. And 12% because they found that the job they were in was too difficult. Often that happens when people are promoted beyond their abilities or beyond their willingness to get involved and do a job well. It's often the case that employers themselves complain about a shortage of skills, but themselves fail to identify the skills of their existing staff. 40% of employers feel that their business is held back in their ability to develop and innovate, whilst at the same time actually already having staff who have untapped potential, staff who have the ability to develop their skills to grow within the company. And the employers themselves are unaware of the skills that are there underneath the nose. And those skills could, as we were saying earlier on, be not the ones that you would put on a CV, but the ability to be part of the growth of the company through those softer skills. Companies often don't know what actually makes them attractive to candidates when hiring. What workers' main priorities when looking for work is that they're looking for meaningful work that they enjoy doing, work that they think has a purpose, and of course a competitive salary. Whilst employers, if they were asked to give a list of their top issues, they believe that employer brand and business values are more important. So that difference in priorities is often an issue that comes up in the hiring process as well. And when recruiting candidates and when going through the matching of the individual to the job, then that kind of conflict is the sort of thing where miscommunication can easily come in. So we often find that when we go back to the crazy to hire matrix, if you hire people who are on the wrong side of that matrix, people who are maybe skilled and qualified to do the job, but not a good culture fit for your organisation, that's not to say that they're not a good culture fit for another organisation, and it's not to say that they're bad people or they're offensive in any way. It's simply that their personality would fit better in a different environment. You may well offer them the job. You may well take on someone who is on the wrong side of the crazy to hire matrix, and they may well accept the job. But in the long run, you're going to be stuck with that individual in a role that they don't really fit well, and the individual, frankly, is going to be stuck with that job where they're not in tune with the environment round about them, And you could ask yourself, well, whose fault is that? Is that the fault of the individual who took the job on the promises? How good are candidates at assessing the culture fit of an organisation when they're going along for interview? Candidates take interviews on a relatively infrequent basis. Candidates are inexperienced in interviewing. Candidates are inexperienced in assessing employers, and we ask them to be very careful the whole time about where they're going, find out as much as possible before they make any decisions. But of course, the employer is much more experienced and qualified and able and capable of making sure that the match is as close as possible. So if you find an individual working for a company who has those skills but just doesn't fit in, then on balance, you'd have to say that the employer is the side of that equation that is in a position to do something about it, in a position to make sure that candidates being hired are being hired to the right job in the right environment, or indeed that people working within any organisation are working in a role that's going to nourish them, that's going to make them keen to come in on a Monday morning, and develop them as individuals, and make sure that those candidates don't end up in the 1/3 of people who would describe themselves as unhappy in their work, or bored, or not challenged in their work. What we really want to see is those percentages move in the direction where your employees, your staff, are far less likely to say that they're unhappy in their work because they've been well matched in the first place and they were on the right side of the crazy to hire line. So from where we've gotten to there, are there any questions that we have from anyone?
Anyone coming through with any questions? Interesting. Do you have any tools or tips for people to actually assess culture, Stephen? Whilst people are typing. You there?
Yep. Well, in my experience, there are tools out there that would help to do that, but in truth, intelligent conversation with as many members of your own staff as possible is really the best way to do that. You could try, in a large organisation, implement a system that can give you the tools to measure that. You can benchmark personality types of individuals working in throughout an organisation and specifically within different departments of an organisation. So with that, you can help to I'll just click back. With that, you can help to make sure that when you're recruiting, you're matching the personality types of the individuals, or at least the successful individuals that you have within an organisation. So in terms of putting a score and a percentage and a label on people, that has been done in any number of ways in the past, but the best, rather, if I was to describe it as analog as opposed to digital, the best way of matching that is to have an analog copy of the people, or an analog assessment of the people who are already working in your organisations. Decide from those assessments what skills are most important to the company, and use that as a template, not an exact copy, but as a guide to recruiting new members of staff. Sometimes it's a case in an organisation where, especially when an organisation grows fast, that they want to lean or direct the culture in a certain direction. They want to become a certain type of employer, and that can be difficult if you already have an existing workforce that doesn't match where you want to be. Some organisations can find themselves either deliberately or inadvertently allowing people who don't fit to move on and hang on to the people that are a better fit. That can happen, and there's all sorts of strategies that can be formulated around engineering the right kind of culture for an organisation. But of course, it's always led from the front. It's always led from the leaders within a company, whether it be HR, the chief executive, or indeed whoever's most the public face of a company, whether it be Richard Branson or any number of very well-known entrepreneurs, or people who are well-known within your sector, your industry, and of course your own company. So
Mm.
yes, you can, to an extent, you can plan to have a certain type of culture, and you can aim in a certain direction, but you can't bring people beyond their comfort zones. You can't change the personality of individuals who are working for you. You can evolve the organisation, but the very best way of doing that is to hire towards a target culture either that you already have or that you're aiming to have.
Absolutely. I've just did a Google whilst you're talking as well to sort of look at assessment and online tools. There's a few sort of human factors and McKinsey Organisational Health Index and a few bits and pieces like that that maybe might be worth looking into as well. But I think
Yes.
you're quite right in
Yeah.
what you say there, Stephen, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Christina Gardinier, there's a question there for you.
What's the best or most
Stephen,
tactful way to tell a candidate that they are not getting the job because they don't fit with the culture? Well, it is a difficult question, and of course, when you say tactful, whenever someone is or isn't whenever someone isn't successful in getting a job, then each company decides for themselves to what extent do we tell the person why they didn't get the job. Sadly, too many companies simply say you didn't get the job, you didn't suit, we found someone better, and it's a nuance in language, but I always prefer to say that someone's not been successful rather than they've been unsuccessful, because that has a connotation with failure. They haven't failed; simply there was someone who was closer to a match. If you were spelling out to an individual that they didn't fit into your culture, then of course there would be nothing wrong in saying that, but you would get into there's a risk that you could get into a conversation where you would have to then back that up with facts and figures. And whilst all employers have the right to hire and the discretion to hire someone that they think they would get along with better, as soon as you bring up facts and figures and stats, then an employer might feel compelled to match those or to work to those to keep within certain guidelines. So when telling any candidate they're not getting the job because they didn't fit in with the culture, then you either have to say it plainly or frankly more diplomatic than that and leave it relatively open-ended.
Would they have the right to appeal to your decision? Wouldn't they?
Well, yes. As I was saying before, if I'm sorry.
No, keep going. It's just some interference on the line there. I think we can just
Okay.
hear somebody talking. Don't we?
Yeah. As I say, employers always have the discretion to hire someone who actually might be less well qualified or less suitable for a job in favour of a candidate who they just like better. Sometimes an employer might hire someone because they support the same football team, or they come from the same town, or they went to the same university, and that kind of discrimination is not necessarily, or certainly not in all cases, illegal, but would be difficult to explain. But it's still the case that an employer has the right to use the discretion when hiring candidates, aside from protected areas such as, of course, age, race, ethnicity, and so on. So if you were assessing candidates, then you're just trying to make sure that you're finding people who match best to your environment. In terms of someone appealing that, then the report is with the employer, and what the employer does with a psychometric assessment, for example, is entirely up to them.
Does anybody else know? Anybody else on the line? I wonder if anybody else has got any ways that they've handled that before at all. Nope. Worth asking. There might be different. Some other.
Very good.
Options
If there
there
are
as
any
well.
questions that come up, it's often the case after these webinars where questions occur to you 5 minutes afterwards or 10 minutes after or the next day, then please feel free to contact me, and I'm more than happy to get into things in more detail with anyone there.
There's a lot of thoughts to think about there, Stephen. It's brilliant. I think that matrix is fabulous. Really sort of highlights the just highlights everything you think about when you're recruiting, doesn't it? Really, and where do the applicants fit on that graph?
Yeah.
I wonder if it can be made into an online tool. Where are they going to fit in there? It could probably work, wouldn't it? It's as you go through that recruitment process, fabulous.
You wouldn't want to show
fabulous.
someone the diagram and say they were in the no-go zone.
No, absolutely not. You could get yourself into a real load of hot water there, wouldn't you? So there's a couple of people still typing, but thank you. Is there anything else that you'd like to add there, Stephen?
I think I've pretty much covered it. If there's anything else, as I say, you want to follow up with, then please ask away.
Carol's just mentioned she loves the matrix too, and thinks it gets her managers to understand understand it better. I can't even talk. I think I can get my managers to understand better using it.
Liz, I think
absolutely.
You make the slides available afterwards, don't you?
I do. I'll put them up on SlideShare as well, if that's all right with you,
Okay.
Stephen, so that people can download and share as well. But I'll send the slides on the recording as well through, so that you can share it with your managers and team and just sort of have a look and have a think. It's very thought-provoking there.
Excellent.
An option sort of when you are recruiting where they are. So very good. Thank you very much. And there you go. Your details are there to get in touch with. Very good. So if you would like a catalogue of any of the events that we've done so far in the last 12, 18 months, then please send me an email. Stephen's done quite a few for us, some really interesting and thought-provoking ones on candidate experiences and other sort of psychometric tests and all sorts of bits and pieces. So just recommend that catalogue, and I can send that through to you. Alternatively, connect with us anywhere else. We run a virtual HR breakfast club for those that are interested as well, and that's once a month, and that's covering neuroscience. So please join us there. And just to let you know, before you disappear, next week's webinar will be on unfair dismissal with barrister Helen Gardiner, and she's going to be talking about the capability issue that many employers do face. So that's on the 10th of February next week at 1 o'clock. So thank you very much. Appreciate all your communication there and your questions that were coming through. So thank you for making the webinar such an enjoyable one. Thank you very much, Stephen. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. You're very welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.